Hey everyone, and welcome back to Nerdium, the show where we talk about all things nerd. And this week, kids, we've decided to touch upon a subject we've neglected for a long while. And not because we didn't know what to say, but because there's so much you could say and barely scratch the surface. That's right, today we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Now granted, there is no shortage of tabletop RPGs, be it Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, Conan, or any of the others. And believe me when I tell you, if there's a subject you love, there's most definitely a tabletop for you. But today we want to touch on the one that started it all, the granddaddy of all RPGs, the unstoppable behemoth who shows no signs of slowing down, the original Dungeons and Dragons. Well, I say original, but we're kind of pretty much just going to focus on 5e, but that's because that's more the streamlined one. That's whatever. Anyway, I'm getting off track. So grab your character sheets and dice. I'll be your dungeon master as we delve into unknown depths, banter with NPCs, and prepare to battle the evil lich that dwells within the mountain. Matt, you round the corner finding two goblins ransacking a pile of audio equipment. They both hear you walk in, stare you down, bar their teeth, and snarl at you. Roll for initiative. Never mind. Play the music.
Alright, so start off the episode by doing a little shout out for an indie comic that's out right now. It's called Lightning Monk. And Lightning Monk is made by a gentleman named Ryan Sawyer. He's an individual that's been born with epilepsy, and he created a character that also has epilepsy that he says has lightning in the brain that helps others. So it's kind of a topic near and dear to his heart. Issue 1 is out now. You can get that on his Etsy shop and following him at Lightning Monk on Twitter. Also, for my little comic project for Fallen, it's currently on hold. The Kickstarter needed a few tweaks, so I'll be back out soon with a few more pages for everybody to check out, so that's something you can look at. And on for our show now. So today's episode is all about D&D.
Yeah, boy.
Something we have been getting into pretty good.
Well, I mean, nobody just gets a little bit into D&D. It's pretty much the second you start, it just kind of sucks you into a portal and doesn't let you out.
Exactly.
Much to your partners yelling and screaming that it's time to stop playing after about 10 hours.
All right, so before we start talking about this and figuring out who gets to talk first, let's roll for initiative. 20.
Oh, that's an 8. Did you get 20?
Oh, no, wait. It's an 8. Roll again. Oh. 5.
15.
You go first.
So after many episodes out on Nerdium, one topics that I think that we've really neglected is to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to try to keep it just to the main original there, because you could branch off to Pathfinder, Starfinder, and just about any tabletop RPG that's out there. But we're going to focus specifically on the original Dungeons and Dragons, created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson all the way back in 1974.
Mm-hmm. And we're not going to go too deep into this. This is going to be for kind of like the D&D newbies that haven't really...
Yeah, for sure.
It's for the people interested in the game.
Yeah, there's a whole rabbit hole that you can go down to. We'll touch on a couple of key moments in the game series itself, but I think we should just kind of stick to just what it's all about and why it's absolutely so fantastic, and maybe talk about the meteoric rise it's had over the past 2 or 3 years, if not maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it probably really... It's been going on for maybe about over 10 years now, like the slow rise, but since the 5th edition came out a couple of years ago, it's gone up pretty quick.
Yeah, well, 5th edition really streamlined a lot of the game mechanics that kind of made it a lot more accessible to a lot of people that probably a little bit more intimidated to get in on it. Mm-hmm. I know when I was growing up, Dungeons and Dragons were for the weird kids, which oddly enough included myself. I mean, I didn't think I was a weird kid, but it obviously included me. And, took place in the basement down away from prying eyes. It was always that weird game that no one talked about, but the people that played it just had the most fun out of all of us.
Mm-hmm. Joke was on us.
Yeah.
So the original game was derived from miniature war games, which was a variation of the 1971 game Chainmail. And Chainmail was used as the initial rule system that eventually became D&D.
Mm-hmm. And it was the whole idea of medieval warfare. Using miniatures. And at the time, there was a lot of miniature war games going on. But Gary Gygax came along and said, "You know what? Let's do the medieval thing." When they created Chainmail, they kind of did this whole idea of for medieval warfare, which the rules were brutal and harsh, just like the medieval times were. But then there was this third notation when they were talking about the game, and that was, medieval warfare, this, that, or whatever you can imagine. And it was that simple sentence that kind of branched off into the world of fantasy that we now occupy and that we now know as Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm. First version of the game actually came out in 1977 as a basic version and advanced D&D. So the difference between the two was just basically how rule intensive you wanted to play. So the basic version, a little lighter on the rules. The advanced one, you had to really follow the rules.
Yeah, and none of these, I never played any of the other versions. My introduction to Dungeons and Dragons was literally 5e. None of my friends really played Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of people got into like Warhammer and other tabletop stuff, but nobody I knew ever actually played Dungeons and Dragons. All I knew was that it was a game that I would probably love. It's just unfortunate I had to wait until much later in adulthood to finally get into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, at this time now you have a little bit more of a spending money to kind of dive into it a little deeper.
The financial backing does help from time to time.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. Like I had friends that had Warhammer, all the minis from Warhammer, painting them all the time. D&D was always kind of in the corner of my eye, just kind of kept peeking over at it, being like, oh, it looks like fun. Mm-hmm. Never quite got into it until the last 3 years.
Yeah, no, I remember it was shortly after we started this podcast there that I kind of gave a shout out looking to play some D&D, and then many books later I've fallen right down that rabbit hole, and we've managed to suck in some friends on our way down into the pit ourselves.
Yeah. And actually, that being said, we are currently working on a D&D podcast.
Yeah, we're presently breaking in a few newbies to get them up and running the game. I have the pleasure of being the dungeon master for everybody, running them through wonderful adventures. And yeah, hopefully we can get that up and going sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so anybody who wants to follow the developments of that or any updates, and if it even comes out, we'll see. But you can follow us at the other Twitter account at NRDScast. And it's Nerdscast.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which stands for Neighbors Rolling Dice Show. So
pretty much, yeah.
Yep.
We are all neighbors, and our wives and girlfriends are super thrilled to be part of our lives of grown men playing Dungeons and Dragons in one of our basements.
Yeah. As you previously mentioned, Dungeons and Dragons is kind of an RPG that falls heavily on imagination for players to interact with NPCs, manipulate worlds around them, and fight enemies. So it's something where creativity is actually awarded. Like it's basically whatever you have, like a framework to work within, but it's whatever you can imagine and come up with.
Think of like your best day playing Skyrim or any open world RPG, and you're walking through the field, and all of a sudden you just come across an invisible wall or an NPC that you can't interact with, or let's say you just decide that you just want to spend the day digging a hole in the ground. The benefit of Dungeons and Dragons is that you can do pretty much anything. The more you use your imagination, the more flush the world that's being described to you comes out in. And it can lead to some really unique situations, shall we say.
Yeah, let's say unique. And it's a fairly easy, simple game to get into. It doesn't cost a whole lot to start. Like, basically all you need is a rulebook, a set of polyhedral dice, and some character sheets. You can pretty much get the character sheets online for free, build characters online for free. The dice are cheap.
Yeah, one of the strange things about Dungeons and Dragons, and I say strange in a weird sense, is that if you go to like D&D Beyond or whatever, they'll let you download as many character sheets as you can imagine. They'll have a free, kind of like a bit of a rule book where it gives you an overview. It's definitely not as detailed as the player's handbook. It definitely doesn't have like the spell list or the classes, but it'll pretty much run you through everything you possibly need to know prior to firing up a game. Yeah,
like a good drug dealer, the first taste is free.
That is exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened to me.
Yeah. So they suck you in pretty good. And like the character creations on D&D and Beyond, it's pretty cool because you can click on things, it explains it to you. There's tons of resources online if you don't get what information you're looking for, but it's pretty straightforward when you're building a character. You can even go like to the really basic character builder options, and they do a lot of the stuff for you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So D&D, they kind of come out in the late 70s. They start going through the 80s, and it really kind of starts taking off in popularity. And the thing about anything that starts to become popular, it starts to ingrain itself in our culture. Sometimes people take notice, and sometimes it starts to take a little bit of flack.
Mm-hmm.
The rock and roll music was going to be the death of the generation. TV was going to rot all of our brains. Video games was going to make us do all kinds of heinous stuff. And Dungeons & Dragons was definitely not impervious to that knowledge. It definitely faced its own series of controversies coming up through the 80s and 90s with the satanic panic and, oh my God, there's no telling what these weird kids in their basements doing. The weird books pretending to throw spells at each other are doing.
They're summoning the devil.
Yeah. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so I got to witness the satanic panic firsthand, and I unfortunately had a lot of friends whose parents believed that anybody that played Dungeons and Dragons was literally bringing the devil into existence because we were all pretending to ride horses through a field to kill a dragon.
It has yet to happen in one of our sessions, but you never know. Open minds.
Hey man, when the pit opens up, I just want you to know that I'll be the first one in there.
Yeah. It was like the whole negative publicity that I got from primarily Christian groups. Not to target Christian groups, nothing wrong with Christian groups, but
they definitely led the charge.
Yeah, it was all the devil worship, witchcraft, murder, polygamy, all that kind of fun stuff you can do in D&D.
Yeah. The problem with D&D is that the borders are essentially set up by your dungeon master, who pretty much doesn't often have that many borders.
No, and even the title alone just screams immorality.
Yeah, well, I mean, you show up dressed up in the wrong outfit once to a D&D party, all of a sudden, get labeled. Just saying.
The leather pants was a little much.
Yeah, but they were so comfortable and freeing.
Yeah. But, like kind of picture Detroit Rock City, that movie, with the mom, with her freaking about Kiss. That's kind of the panic that they had with D&D.
Pretty much. That kind of panic being led by the Saturday Night Live church lady played by Dana Carvey.
Yeah. But anyways, back to the game itself. Players can create their own characters, race, class, alignment, all that. Like, you can be chaotic good, chaotic evil, lawful good, evil, all that kind of stuff. Like, you can do all kinds of things with the game. Like, you can be a dwarf, elf, human, all kinds.
It's pretty much the episode that we had, I don't know how many episodes ago, when we talked about high fantasy. That's the world you live in. You can be a dwarf, elf, and then, depending on how deep down this dark little rabbit hole you want to crawl into, there's supplements that'll let you be goblins, it'll let you be a kobold, it'll let you be all kinds of other weird races that aren't necessarily available just through the basic handbook.
And on top of that, you can even do your homebrewed characters too. Like, you can build something completely new and unseen using the framework that they have.
Yep, absolutely. I would strongly recommend you ask your dungeon master if you want to do something too weird. But aside from that, yeah, man, the strange thing is, it's a game. It has a foundation. It has rules. But the number one rule is pretty much have fun and do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was originally published by TSR, and it's now done by Wizards of the Coast. And if you're listening to the podcast, you've probably heard of Wizards of the Coast.
There's a good chance one of our listeners, at some point in time in their life, have played a game of Magic the Gathering, which is taken care of by Wizards of the Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And Wizards of the Coast purchased they basically bought the rights to sell D&D products. So D&D Beyond, any Dungeons and Dragon books, miniatures, you name it, if it's got D&D on it, it's Wizards of the Coast.
Yep. And I don't know if you've noticed, but because of the whole elves, orcs, all that kind of stuff, you can say that Gary Gygax was heavily influenced by mythology and fantasy novels, especially Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, other works by H.P. Lovecraft, Lewis Carroll, a few others.
He actually got in trouble for a few things. The reason we have halflings inside of the game is because he got his pee-pee smacked for using Hobbit.
Yeah.
So Hobbits turned to halflings, Ents turned to tree Ents, and so on and so forth. They had to kind of tweak everything that was going on.
Yeah, Tolkien's people were kind of like, yeah, easy guy.
Yeah, you're stepping on our toes.
Yeah. And, like, depending on what campaign you're in or module you're in, you'll see different flavors from different inspirations. Like, you'll get into, like, a campaign where you can really kind of taste the H.P. Lovecraft.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, like, you'll see more of a Leviathan kind of thing.
Well,
Cthulhu.
Even the Mind Flayers, they're basically heads with giant tentacles hanging out the front of it. That's very much a Cthulhu-looking like character.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to the podcast, you don't know what I'm talking about. One, shame on you. Get woke. But two, go on Google and type in Mind Flayer, and you'll type in Mind Flayer, type in Cthulhu. You'll see exactly what we're talking about.
Does that term apply for knowing what H.P. Lovecraft is?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. I don't know, but okay. Yeah, like you've seen H.P. Lovecraft type stuff before. If you haven't actually seen the source material, like the initial Hellboy movies, kind of touch on the Lovecraftian kind of genre. So
yeah, we've seen Lovecraft, like the whole dark terrors. Bird Box, they're the things that send people over the edge, or like deemed to be. You've heard the term Lovecraftian horror. These are things that he dealt with a weird kind of astrological, eternal entity. They're all unpleasant to look at and would drive you crazy if you saw them.
Yeah, there's a movie that just came out not that long ago. We were talking about another episode where it was almost like an 80s flavor, and it had the Lovecraft kind of touch to it.
I really can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, so to ask me to go back in episodes, I would be completely lost.
Yeah, I don't know what that movie's called.
Lovecraftian horror.
Yeah, it's the movie, just a complete sidebar, the movie takes place in a hospital. Deputy sheriff kind of thing, and then there's I'm not describing the movie
half of our listeners just pictured like the opening sequence of like the first Walking Dead episode.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a secret society and all that, but anyways, moving along from that. Yeah,
the Breach,
something like that.
Yeah,
Breach.
Yeah,
the Rift.
The Rift. I can see the poster. I can see the big triangle.
It's the big triangle one, yeah.
The big triangle movie.
Yeah. And the rest of our listeners now is turned off.
Yeah, saying anybody... The only people sticking around now are the true D&D fans that are trying to figure out just what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah, they're like, when's the D&D stuff coming back?
Soon.
Anyways.
Just fast forward 15 seconds.
Yeah. But anyways, because of that meteoric rise of D&D kind of society now, we're starting to see it a lot more in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we had that unfortunate Dungeons and Dragons film in 2000.
Well, I mean, yeah, of which I still can't bring myself to watch.
You haven't seen it?
No, I just on principle.
So I thought it would be a cool movie to watch, not knowing what D&D was.
Okay.
Watched the movie, didn't think anything of it. Had Marlon Wayans, Jeremy Irons. Jeremy Irons is a solid enough actor. You think he'd be able to carry the movie. He's the villain, and he does, like, you actually almost root to see more of the villain.
See, when I was a kid, I watched the Dungeons and Dragons Saturday morning cartoon for, like, ages.
Yeah.
Like, even when it went into syndication, I would watch the reruns. So that was my first taste of D&D. But I've spent some time with some, like, off-brand D&D stuff, and I don't know that I have as much love for it. Yeah,
so this movie did not use the property properly. Like, you can't tell it's actually D&D other than there's elves, orcs, dwarves.
So it's basically a bad Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's a poor man's Lord of the Rings. Like, if it didn't have the D&D name to it, you wouldn't really know that it was a D&D movie. I'd have to rewatch it again. but it got really bad ratings.
Which is weird because D&D, like all properties, has a certain amount of characters that kind of transcend episodes, shall we say.
Yeah.
So in D&D, the stories, there's really no one cohesive story, and you can pull a story out of your ass and play it as much as you want if you're a DM. That's your prerogative. The modules that are released, there's no particular series of modules where you have to play one before the other. In certain circumstances, Rise of the Dragons is a little different. But for the most part, you can grab just about any module at any time and run a campaign. But there are always certain characters that pop up. And you would think that they would have used that in the D&D movie.
You would think so. And as far as I'd have to, like, now that I know more D&D, I'd have to go back and rewatch it to see what they actually used. But from off memory, I don't really remember them. I don't know. I'd have to go further down the rabbit hole on that one.
Yeah. I'll leave that up to you because there's no way I'm watching that movie.
Yeah.
I feel like it would hurt my feelings.
On a side note, the movie you should watch is the one that we were just talking about called The Void.
Aha! The Google box.
Yeah, Google. All right. So, back to pop culture. Like, you've seen D&D before on episodes of The Simpsons. Community actually did a really awesome...
Community did an amazing D&D episode.
If you haven't watched Community and you don't really feel like watching the entire series, watch the entire series just so you know the background of the characters, but their D&D episode is actually pretty awesome.
There's actually 2 episodes of Community that I watch if I ever watch it on Netflix. One is the D&D episode, and then there's this weird 8-bit episode that they did. Yep. Those are my 2 favorite, and I watch them. If I ever get a hankering for Community, those are the 2 I go to.
Most of their paintball ones are pretty good too.
Yes.
You also see it in the way back in Freaks and Geeks.
Well, the name of the show speaks for itself.
Yeah. Big Bang Theory just did one just recently where the casting was amazing.
They also, Dungeons and Dragons has popped up in Big Bang a couple of times. Mm-hmm. I mean, they would be foolish not to.
Yeah, but the group that they get together for the celebrity D&D game, it's pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah? Right on.
Yeah, you haven't seen it?
Nope, not at all.
No,
I would love to watch TV one day soon.
They have Shatner, Joe Manganiello, or how do you pronounce his name? I'm
not even going to bother trying.
Yeah, they have Joe Manganiello. You all know him. Will Wheaton, which is a regular on Big Bang. Anyways, yeah, they have a good... Oh, Kevin Smith. They have a good cast, though, for that. It's a pretty fun episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Spend some time with my TV soon.
Yeah, and then most notably, you've definitely seen D&D on Stranger Things.
If you've ever seen Stranger Things, I mean, it opens with D&D.
Most of their actual kind of how they ground their understanding of what's going on, and the first season at least, is based on D&D.
Yeah, absolutely. You can actually, and I haven't really gone looking for it yet. One of the modules that you can buy is actually the young lad's character there. It's his homebrew campaign with the Demigorgon. You can buy that module and run it. Yeah,
it's the the quest for the Thessalhydra.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so you can get that now, and it has all the Demigorgons and all that, and it looks pretty cool. That might be something we have to look at.
I'll throw money at Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, but since then, even more popularity with the release of Critical Role, which is that streamed series on Twitch and also their podcast.
Yeah, if you've ever gone to YouTube and typed in Dungeons and Dragons, at some point in time you've come across Critical Role or Vox Machina, something like that. The name Matt Mercer is probably ingrained into your head as the Dungeon Master for the Critical Role gang. Yeah.
So Matt Mercer is a professional voice actor that knows D&D probably better than anybody else right now on this.
That man knows the Dungeon Master's Manual
yeah.
front to back, the handbook front to back. He's astounding with his knowledge.
Yeah. Like, for our D&D podcast we're working on, we can only aspire to be 10% of what Critical Role is. Like they're a whole new level. They have a whole team of.
Well, they have a production team to begin with.
Yeah.
But when you cut away the production team and just look at what's going on around the table, there is no way of getting over like professional voice actors and just Matt Mercer's just love for the game. Like this is a man that like truly
he's got a passion.
Yeah, he's got a huge passion,
yeah.
and it shows. Everybody there loves what they do, and they're doing what they love, and it's an amazing podcast, or it's an amazing Twitch channel. If you've never really sat down and spent a little bit of quality time on it, I would strongly recommend checking out the first episode or two, just to kind of get a feel for how they play out.
Yeah, like the episodes are like probably about 3 hours long usually.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily safe for work. There's some swearing. There's some adult content.
It can be touchy at times. Yeah.
It's some good stuff. Like especially if you're getting into D&D and you're not quite sure what D&D is. Listen to a few of their episodes and you kind of get a good feel of what you can actually do in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. Matt and I were talking about this before we recorded. If your first experience with D&D, you want to know what it's all about, and then you sit down and you watch the Critical Role gang, and they're just smashing around, they're having a great time. Temper your expectations when you go to like an Adventurer Leagues game or sit down at a game that you know is going on. Not everybody is a professional voice actor, and not every dungeon master is Matt Mercer.
Yeah. Yeah. With what I said, yeah, that's a very professional crew. But just to like see all the things you can do in a world of D&D, it's a good group to kind of follow.
Yeah, I think the idea of actually seeing a bunch of people play a game where you can do literally anything you want that would probably be one of your best experiences. There's a bunch of streams out there that you can watch D&D and a bunch of podcasts out there, but if you want to go to the top of the list for top quality, top production value, characters, the whole nines, I would start a Critical Role. Yeah.
And if you're listening and you have one that you like, feel free to tweet at us like the information. Like we want to listen to all of them that we can. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm all about broadening my horizons one way or the other.
Yeah, give them a little bit of a shout out and we'll check them out. So also with kind of like the popularity of D&D and how it's becoming more mainstream, you're starting to get a lot of celebrities coming out saying that they've either played or they have played before, or they're starting to play.
It's funny how confessing to your D&D nerdism is now like the thing to do.
Well, nerd is the new chic, so.
Well, we are the cool kids. A couple of decades too late, but we're the cool kids now, I guess.
Cool kids that actually kind of drive the economy now.
So. Yeah, for the record, we blazed the trail. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, like you get like the Joe Manganiello. I don't know. Anyways, he's like probably one of the biggest, most vocal supporters of D&D right now, and he has the Death Saves group there that they get a lot of stuff coming out. It's really awesome. Stephen Colbert, no surprise there.
I was a little shocked, but I mean, it was just like one of those. I wasn't like blown away. It was more or less one of those like, oh, no kidding.
Well, there's like there's a long list of people that I can go with here, but I'll name it a few and then see if your eyebrows raise up. Anderson Cooper.
Oh, I was going to mention Anderson Cooper if you hadn't mentioned Anderson Cooper. That was a great one. I was actually really shocked when I found out that he played. I'm like, you're such a beautiful man. Why are you playing D&D in a basement with a bunch of weirdos like us?
I did a tour of New York City, and they went by his place. It's this awesome, like, kind of redone fire hall.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So he's probably doing D&D in there right now.
Oh, show me your D&D setup, Anderson.
That's personal.
I'd share mine.
Well. Vin Diesel.
I watched the Celebrity D&D with Vin Diesel.
Yeah?
Yes, absolutely. And Terry Crews as well.
Yeah, I saw Terry Crews in there too. Yeah. Vin Diesel, like, yeah, surprising but not surprising.
I could see him playing D&D.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh yeah, Dwayne Johnson.
Really?
There we are.
Really? Okay, no, I did not see that one coming.
Yeah, Jon Favreau.
I'm not overly shocked with that.
No?
No.
The next one's not going to shock you at all. James Franco.
No, he's exactly who I would expect to see at a D&D table.
Yeah, freaks and geeks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be disappointed if he wasn't at a D&D table. If I find out he had never played or wasn't interested, I would be disappointed.
Pretty sure that's how the series ended, was they got him to play with their little group, freaks and geeks group.
Yeah,
D&D group.
Hell of a way to end it.
Yeah. Next one, not going to surprise you, Stephen King.
I'm not shocked.
No.
If I look at you and I can smell nerd all over you and you're like, oh yeah, I played in D&D. Well, yeah, of course you do.
Oh, I really should have worked on this list a little bit better because it just gets worse.
It just gets more and more obvious as we go along.
Yeah. I should have went some wide ones here, but anyways, Elon Musk.
I'm kind of shocked. I'm a little shocked that he plays D&D. Now, is this he plays D&D or he played past tense, doesn't play anymore?
I don't know. The guy's got all the money in the world, smokes a bunch of weed. He probably plays still.
Yeah, he probably plays.
Yeah. This next one's going to blow your mind. Not George R.R. Martin, creator of Game of Thrones.
So I play, on Sunday nights, I play with the Ottawa board gaming community, and there's like 4 or 5 like D&D sessions on the go at any given time. One of the DMs actually looks like a somewhat larger, hairier version of George R.R. Martin.
Pretty much like any kind of nerdy fat guy with a beard throws on that little cap, and he thinks he's George R.R. Martin.
True story.
Just because you're less surprised, I'm going to look up some more lists. Well, not surprising at all here is Kevin Smith.
No, that is not surprising at all. But the thing about D&D is that, essentially, you're basically, all of you sit around a table and you play pretend for anywhere from like the games I run on Sundays are typically like 2-hour sessions. Our games usually run like 3 to 4 hour sessions, depending on how much brandy I've had to drink at any given time. And then, so like, as a group of people just sitting around a table playing pretend, if you tell me, like, if you give me a list of actors that like play D&D, I'm like, well, yeah, sure. These are people that play pretend for a living, professionally.
Oh, well, then let's get off the actor list then.
Okay.
Even though Kevin Smith is pretty awesome, like I would almost say he's a fan of the show, but not really. He's liked a bunch of our tweets.
Yeah, we'll just say he's a friend of the show.
Friend of the show, yeah. The late Chester Bennington.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. The current Rivers Cuomo from Weezer.
Okay, that doesn't shock me at all, man. Come on, it's Weezer.
Doing some editing on this one. Sasha Grey.
Really?
Yep.
Huh. Okay.
There's actually a couple of porn stars on the list that actually like to, raid a few dungeons.
D&D is for everybody, regardless of your profession.
Yeah, that's a way to put it, I guess.
Well, I mean, the thing about Dungeons and Dragons is that it's accessible to anybody, and it might not be your thing. You know what I mean? Like, you might. I would recommend that if you've never played D&D before, that you sit down and maybe play a game with a group of people that are willing to let you know how the game runs and see how you like it.
Yeah.
But D&D is accessible to anybody. Anybody can sit down at any given time and give a quick run. When you make your characters, there are characters that are significantly easier to play than others. There are ones that are far more complicated to play than others. It really just kind of reaches out to just a huge, broad spectrum.
Yeah. Trey Parker.
Not shocked with that. Damn it. I mean, I remember what Trey Parker looked like in the 90s. I'm not shocked that he did.
Valid point. On the list, I'm a little surprised with Bruce Reyes Chow. What's a Presbyterian minister?
There was the author of the Ravencroft module is a practicing Mormon. He's right up there in the church.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Further on the list, Kurt Schilling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, baseball player.
Yeah.
Spielberg, not surprised.
No, look at Spielberg. You smell geek on him.
Carl Urban.
Okay.
He's an actor. And you can see that he'd probably be into D&D because that's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
Like, well, he was in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah. Joss Whedon. The late Robin Williams.
Yeah, I could see him playing D&D, for sure.
Rainn Wilson.
Really?
Yeah. Well, the list goes on. I could keep going. But,
Like I said, the D&D is played by any kind of group of people at any given time.
It's kind of the point I was driving at.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember when like we were growing up and coming up through school, like if you played D&D, you just kept that stuff to yourself.
Yeah.
There was no way you were bragging about playing D&D at school lest you get your head kicked in. And I was a big kid. No one was kicking my head in, but like, goddamn, I didn't brag about my nerdiness either.
But now you're getting leaders of enterprise, actors, bigwig directors, athletes.
Well, it's like you said, where our generation's now kind of come up. We're now the ones spending the money, and we're also old enough to not really give a damn about what 15-year-olds think about our hobbies.
You cut off my list there. I was going to say politicians and porn stars.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah, and like sometimes, those two are together.
Say sometimes they do tend to intermingle. But the thing is, I mean, like, hey, listen. Any politician steps up and is like, yeah, I totally play D&D, and this is the day that I do it, yada, yada, yada. They probably have my vote. I probably have more in common with that politician than the guy that doesn't.
Yeah, you don't even really need to know anything about their foreign policy.
No, absolutely not. I will watch this country burn because my leader played D&D, so he got my vote.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what his character is, though.
True story.
Yeah.
I got a thing against gnomes. It's nothing personal. It's just... They can't be trusted. You
got to judge somebody pretty hard on some of their character choices. So.
I've seen some things. Yeah. I have seen some things.
Yeah. I've seen you in leather pants and your dungeon gear, so.
Well, you said you wanted a dungeon master. I don't know what I'm supposed to accept from that.
My fault. I didn't clarify in the
it was
the post,
a one-time deal. Okay, I've worn jeans and a t-shirt since.
Thank you. Anyways, well, thanks for listening to our... D&D episode. If you haven't played before, it's definitely something to check out. It's the new Monopoly.
It is the new Monopoly. It's the very expensive, never-ending money pit Monopoly.
Which is kind of Monopoly in itself. And if you are interested in a brand spanking new D&D podcast, keep an eye on us in the future. We'll have one hopefully coming soon.
Yeah, it's just a matter of teaching a bunch of grown adults how to play D&D and watch them fall down the same pit I fell down a couple of years ago.
Anyways.
and that being said, give us a shout out. What if you play D&D, if you play Pathfinder, let us know what you roll, what you play, how you like to play it.
Yeah.
And let us know what you'd like to hear and what you'd like to see.
Yeah, very similar to the whole situation that happened with SNL lately with the D&D selfies. We want to hear everything that you have to say, like, we want to see your characters. We want to see how you play.
Absolutely.
Send us a picture of your dice. I don't care. If
you're a DM, you got some ideas you want me to throw at the guys while we're running our games, let me know. Shout out to me. Send it to the @Nerdium Twitter page, or you can get in touch with me at the Big Bald Nerd and let me know how I can mess around with my players.
Please be gentle.
Don't be gentle.
Gentle. All right. Later, guys.
Have fun, guys.
That'll do it for today's episode. As always, we want to thank you guys for spending just a little bit of your day with us. Matt and I always appreciate it. If you'd like to support our show, you can at patreon.com/nerdium. If you can't but want to help, feel free to give us a 5-star review wherever you enjoy listening. It'll help promote the show and show us you enjoy what we're doing. If you have any show ideas, comments, suggestions, or just want to say hi, you can email us at nerdiumpodcast@gmail.com. And if you'd like to find us on all the other social medias, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, just search Nerdium Podcast. On behalf of Matt and I, thanks again for listening, thanks for your support, and always, make sure you stay nerdy.